It was a cold morning in February 2013 when Duck, a bright-eyed high school student in China, was jolted awake by a sharp knock echoing through his small bedroom. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, he could feel the tension in the air, a familiar heaviness that often hung over his household. Just hours earlier, he had endured a heated argument with his parents. They were frustrated with his passion for drumming, which they deemed impractical, insisting that he focus on his studies. Duck felt suffocated, caught between their expectations and his own aspirations. But this morning would lead him to a much darker reality than he could have imagined. When Duck opened the door, his heart raced at the sight of two men standing there, their expressions serious and authoritative. They introduced themselves as police officers, their voices firm yet oddly casual. Without a moment's hesitation, they insisted he accompany them regarding someone he supposedly knew who was in trouble. Confusion washed over Duck. Who could they possibly mean? As he stepped outside, a sense of foreboding settled over him, making him question everything he thought he knew about the world around him. As Duck climbed into the back seat of the civilian car, unease began to creep into his mind. There were no flashing lights or uniforms, just an unmarked vehicle that felt all too ordinary. The men, although friendly in tone, seemed to avoid eye contact, their gestures almost too rehearsed. As they drove away from his home, Duck's heart sank when he noticed they were not heading toward the police station, but rather away from the familiar streets of his neighborhood. Panic bubbled beneath the surface as the scenery shifted to isolated stretches of road, each passing moment amplifying his anxiety. When they finally arrived at a compound surrounded by tall green gates and high walls lined with iron wire, a chill ran down Duck's spine. The atmosphere was oppressive, the air thick with an unsettling quiet. It was only then that the realization struck him. He was not going to a police station. He had been taken to a reform school for troubled teens, masked as a correctional facility for behavioral issues. The once friendly demeanor of the so-called officers faded, replaced by a sense of dread that left him feeling trapped. In that moment, Duck understood the gravity of his situation. A young man caught in a system that would reshape his life in ways he had yet to comprehend. The rapid rise of internet access among Chinese teens in the early 2000s had an unforeseen impact on society. Internet cafes quickly became the go-to hangouts, buzzing with the excitement of gaming and social networking. However, this newfound digital freedom sparked a moral panic as reports of teens suffering from internet addiction emerged. Parents and educators, alarmed by alarming stories of youth harmed by excessive online engagement, began to voice their concerns, leading to a nationwide outcry. The internet, once seen as a gateway to knowledge and connectivity, was increasingly framed as a dangerous vice threatening the fabric of society. In response to this growing fear, the Chinese government mobilized, categorizing internet addiction as a public health threat. Officials cited statistics claiming that millions of teens were at risk, labeling the issue as an epidemic requiring immediate action. Propaganda campaigns proliferated, highlighting the dangers of excessive internet use, and the narrative quickly shifted from individual responsibility to a collective societal issue. This shift created an atmosphere ripe for intervention, where parents and authorities felt justified in taking extreme measures to save youth from the perceived perils of the internet. With the momentum building against internet addiction, the government implemented a series of stringent measures. Raids on internet cafes became commonplace, with teens barred from entering these once thriving social spaces. This led to the rise of unregistered, dark cafes, where young people would gather in secrecy, further highlighting the disconnect between government efforts and the reality of teen behavior. As the government pushed for a clinical designation of internet addiction, the vague symptoms associated with the disorder meant that a wide range of youths could be swept up in the wave of concern. The emergence of internet addiction camps, often modeled after military boot camps, offered a controversial solution. These facilities touted themselves as centers for rehabilitation, employing harsh disciplinary methods designed to break down and reshape behavior. Reports of strict regimens, cold showers, and rigorous drills painted a grim picture of what awaited those sent to these camps. For many parents, it seemed a necessary sacrifice to reclaim their children from the clutches of addiction. But for the kids, it often felt like being sentenced to a living nightmare. Upon entering the reform school, Duck was confronted with a grueling daily routine that left no room for personal freedom. Mornings began with an early wake-up call, followed by a series of rigorous drills that tested both physical and mental endurance. The schedule was relentless: limited shower time, mandatory exercises, and a strict diet designed to strip away any semblance of comfort. Each day felt like a battle against fatigue and despair, as the oppressive structure of camp life left little time for reflection or hope. Duck quickly learned that he was under constant surveillance, with staff keeping a watchful eye on every move. The rules were draconian, and any attempt to escape or rebel was met with harsh punishment. Within this stifling environment, a distinct social hierarchy emerged. Newcomers like Duck were often bullied, forced to navigate the treacherous dynamics of power and submission. Physical punishments were not uncommon, and favoritism among staff meant that those who complied without question gained certain privileges, while others faced relentless scrutiny. As the days turned into weeks, the emotional toll of Duck's experience became increasingly evident. The isolation he felt was suffocating, compounded by the constant bullying and harsh treatment from both peers and guards. Each day was a struggle to maintain a sense of self amidst the trauma, and the psychological impact weighed heavily on him. The sense of camaraderie he had hoped to find in a community of fellow campers was overshadowed by a culture of fear and mistrust. In an effort to cope and avoid further punishment, Duck began to conform to the prevailing trends within the camp. To gain favor with the guards, he would offer massages, a practice that left him feeling conflicted and degraded. Yet, in a place where survival meant navigating complex social dynamics, conforming to the expectations of others became a survival tactic. Duck's struggle to find balance between his identity and the need for acceptance was a painful reminder of the toll that this harrowing experience was taking on his psyche. Amidst the oppressive atmosphere of the reform school, one figure loomed larger than the rest: Uncle Yang, the pioneer behind the controversial brain-waking treatment. Known for his aggressive approach to curing internet addiction, Yang's methods blended psychiatric medication with a regimen of forced detox and what were referred to as humiliation sessions. His controversial techniques drew both praise and ire, as they promised rapid results but at a significant psychological cost. In the eyes of the government, Yang was a hero, a soldier in the war against internet addiction, revered for his unwavering commitment to reforming wayward youth. Room 13, a place whispered about in fear, served as the headquarters for Yang's most extreme treatments. Unlike other areas of the camp, this room was reserved for those deemed the most troubled, those who had not responded to Yang's earlier methods. Here, patients faced even harsher realities. The forced sessions were intense and often resulted in severe psychological trauma. For many, entering Room 13 marked a descent into a nightmare, where the hope of rehabilitation was overshadowed by the very real threat of lasting harm. The air was thick with the weight of despair, leaving those who emerged forever altered by the experience. After 4 long months, Duck's release from the camp came as a bittersweet relief. While he stepped out of the facility, the sunlight felt warm against his skin, a stark contrast to the cold, clinical environment he had endured. However, beneath the surface of his newfound freedom lay the haunting remnants of his time there. The emotional scars lingered, echoes of humiliation, fear, and isolation that followed him into the outside world. As he reconnected with family and friends, Duck realized that he was forever changed. The carefree spirit of his youth had been replaced by a guardedness he couldn't shake. In reflecting on his experience, Duck recognized how fortunate he was compared to others who had faced even more extreme treatment methods. While his camp had its share of trauma, he had avoided the brutal tactics employed in other facilities, some of which left lasting psychological damage. He understood that this system was a symptom of a broader societal struggle, a struggle to navigate the complexities of modernity, mental health, and the ever-increasing pressure from parents to succeed. Duck's observations on the wider implications of internet addiction camps served as a reminder of the societal challenges many families faced in an increasingly digital world. As Duck came to terms with his experience, he found himself grappling with the complexities of his relationship with his family post-camp. The conversations that followed were often awkward and filled with unspoken tensions, as he sought to articulate the pain and confusion he felt during his time at the reform school. His ordeal opened his eyes to the broader issue of internet addiction treatment in China, where the balance between discipline and understanding often tipped toward control and punishment. In closing, Duck invites the audience to ponder the ethical implications of such methods. Are these extreme responses justified, or do they merely reflect society's inability to address the root causes of addiction? As we navigate a world increasingly defined by technology, Duck's story serves as a catalyst for critical conversations about mental health, parental control, and the paths we choose for healing.